Welcome back to another episode of the Chasin Altitude podcast. Today I'm joined by Sabina, a flight instructor and A320 pilot. And today's actually a bit of a full circle episode for me. She's actually my first ever flight instructor, so it's a pleasure to have her on. Welcome to the show, Sabina.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you again.
How yourself? Would you like to introduce yourself properly and just tell us what first got you into wanting to become a pilot?
Yeah, my name is Sabina, as you introduced me, and I have been a first officer for about 2 years now. I started off as a flight instructor in 2020, and of course I had you, Alice, as one of my students over the years. Actually, now looking back, I've been instructor for 3 years, and lots of my former students are now doing the captain upgrade. So yeah, it's crazy. I feel like a mom, and I look at all of you guys growing up and I feel like I'm getting old. So yeah, I fly the Airbus around Europe and living the dream, literally.
I'd like to take you back to the start of your journey. Where did your flight training begin, and take us through your first ever lesson?
My flight training started in 2019, around May time. I went for trial flight, and I still remember my very first flight. I flew with Pav, who maybe you may have flown with at some point in Northfield as well. And I remember it was just sort of spring, summer-ish, and I was looking outside around all the green and yellow fields. I was thinking, God, that's beautiful. I was thinking, I wish I could just dare to dream to even get my PPL. And at first I thought, well, I'll try and maybe get solo one day and all that. So it was a lot more going through my mind. I never really dreamed even as big as this. I thought I'll be happy if I just go solo. And then I thought I'll be happy if I just get my PPL. And then I thought I'll be happy if I'm just an instructor, and I thought I'll be happy if I fly the Airbus. So yeah, it all started with a small dream on one day in May in 2019.
In terms of new pilots that are listening to this, obviously there's a whole thing about integrated versus modular. What's your opinions on either or?
I mean, it's not even, I think it's not even an opinion anymore. I know very little people that actually were even considering integrated or they had a successful experience with them, because it's a tough one. I think the only way to go integrated is if you maybe, but right now it's you're lucky because I know BA have opened Speedbird Academy, and TUI also have their MPL programs and lots of scholarships. That way it's definitely worth doing it, because they take you all the way through, and then you have a guarantee of a job, which is a big thing actually. But any other way, I would always recommend modular. I think I can't even imagine it not being modular, because you do it in your own pace. Most of us don't have an awful lot of money up front, and it's a bit silly to put it all down, or half of it, or whatever, how much of it, to any school, no matter how good they are, because you never know. If COVID taught us anything, is that actually no industry is safe, and it's better not to put down any money up front, because you just never know. And I think you value it more if you do it step by step, and then you can always take a step back, as you did, for a while, and reconsider and regather, and then have new strengths and start again and pick up where you left. You don't get that with integrated. If you want to take a break, most likely you'll lose the money and you'll lose the progress that you made. So yes, I would definitely recommend modular from my experience.
And in terms of your modular experience, what was the hardest part of it, would you say?
I think in a way, it's both good and bad. Of course, with modular, you have the choice. So you have the choice to do your PPL somewhere, and then you do your hour building somewhere else if you want, and then the night rating somewhere else, and CPL and multi-engine, another school if you wanted. But then you've got the choice, and it's always hard, even if you know students who've been there. Some people have good experiences, others don't. People see things differently. So actually making the choice is a little bit hard sometimes. You have to get lucky, and you have to do a lot of research. And I think that's the downside of modular, because you never really know. Like for example, I did my PPL at Northfield, and then I wanted to do my CPL abroad and multi-engine, and actually the whole experience was difficult to deal with because then you have to organize travel, you have to organize accommodation somewhere else, you have to then flights get cancelled there, instructors get sick or planes get AOG, and so then it can get delayed. Sometimes it means that it's taking a lot longer. I also found that actually in terms of ATPL theory, I was lucky actually. I went to Bristol Ground School, and I have to say they are fantastic. I would really, really recommend them. Because I'm the type of student, I like to go to classes and I like to be taught. I don't do so well, especially with subjects that I don't particularly understand, having just to do self-study. I think you have to be very disciplined to be able to do a lot of self-study. That's where the integrated part helps you because it guides you a bit better, I think, especially if you're struggling a little bit with the theory. But yes, all in all, I mean, it worked for me. I think I got also lucky, and also I had to work probably much harder than others in many ways. But it's all good experience.
I think it makes it more rewarding for you in the end as well, doesn't it? If you look back, it's more of a sort of satisfying journey, I think.
We look at things differently. So see, for example, I see lots of first officers that are, they just started a journey and they never really experienced the side of instructing like I did. So they finished the school, 250 hours, and off you go. You do your type rating and you straight away go and fly the Airbus, for example. I wouldn't have done it any other way. I think the instructing time has been so useful, so good for me and so enjoyable. I can't imagine just going straight to the airlines. I don't think I would have had the understanding, especially with complex aircraft, especially learning to work in multi-crew environment and to be confident on the radio and to understand the systems and airspace and everything. I think it helps a lot more if you allow yourself to experience this side a bit more. When you are an instructor, you're forced to almost act like a captain, all the time. So I think that's a really good experience if you or anybody considers doing that. You know how they have in America, they 1,500 hours minimum until you can go to the airlines.
Yeah.
Most of them end up instructing whether they like it or not. It's not the same case for us, but I think it is a very useful experience anyway. Even though it's not compulsory, I think it's so useful. So I would definitely recommend that to anybody considering that, especially if you're younger and you don't have much life experience even. That can teach you a lot.
Yeah, it's something I want to do myself, definitely. So it's good to hear from someone that has done it. In terms of becoming a flight instructor in the UK, if people are listening and want to become an instructor, what do you need in terms of ratings and hours?
Now I have to see if I can remember all. All I know is when I did my instructor's course, you needed to have the CPL theory minimum, so not the CPL practical test, although that's helpful to have. CPL theory, minimum 200 hours, and I believe I can't tell off the top of my head because I haven't looked at these documents from the CA in a long time.
Cool.
I think 200 hours total, out of which maybe 150 PIC or something along the lines. So I think these are the main two requirements, the CPL theory, the minimum 200 or 150 PIC hours. As a minimum, of course, you can have more. And also, they need to do it for you, or you could have had it from elsewhere, is the teaching and learning module, which actually, once you have it, is very useful even later on. So, for example, if I were to become an instructor, having had that module already, that helps me skip some bits that I would normally have to do in order to be able to instruct, even on the Airbus. Of course, it's not yet the case. I'm just looking maybe in a year's time at upgrade, but at the moment, that's it's helpful. So the teaching and learning side of it, anyway, it basically does what it says on the tin. It helps you develop skills to teach other people, to your listening and explaining skills, because actually I remember, by the way, I did my course at Andrewsfield, which I would 100% recommend. That's in case you or anybody else is interested. That's in the UK, of course. I believe Carol Cooper still is there with Mike, and yes, they are a great team. And there, it's the emphasis is mainly on theory, because it's assumed that you already have a number of hours flying skills are important, and I think the main thing is getting us on the right hand seat, because of course you would have flown only on the left. So you get used to a little bit flying from the right hand seat, and basically you have to get used to writing on the board, writing presentations, and explaining a lot of very basic things, which quite often you don't get to. I remember I got through the whole ATPL theory, and I thought, well, I'm still learning lots of things with the instructor's course, and I thought that was the most demanding course I've ever done up until type rating, definitely. Wow. So yeah, it's been challenging, especially if you do it properly, like they do at Andersfield, and it's just a great way of acquiring more knowledge and more skills also, because they put you in some situations actually worse than real life students, although I've had some experiences with real life students as well, and they really get you all ready for teaching, well, as ready as you can be, really.
I wanted to talk to you about that as well. What's your most interesting experience you've had with a student, would you say?
Honestly, I used to have loads of stories. I mean, I right now I just remember the good times, but yes, I've had some close calls. I mean, people using the wrong rudder with the crosswind corrections, or pulling mixture instead of power and all that sort of things, or climbing. You remember North Wheel, right? 1,200 foot.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're climbing, ending up at 1,400, being very close to Stansted CTA, or getting too low, or all sorts of things. Yeah, I mean, students do silly things, and sometimes actually it's, how they say, hearing goes first. You may tell them 100 times, don't do this or be careful with this, but it's amazing how we just block everything out when we're stressed. You just have to keep an open mind. You have to be quite relaxed and try and keep the mental image clear and situational awareness, because if you lose it, then game over.
And the people that want to become an instructor as well, what's a sort of typical day in the life of an instructor?
I mean, back in the day, I remember, but my day used to start very early. Probably I'd get up at about 6, 7 a.m. I'd be at the airfield by 7:30 or something. 9 a.m. would already be airborne normally, all being well. So that would give us time to pre-flight the aircraft, or the aircrafts if we were planning to fly more aircrafts that day. Do the briefing, get everything ready. First check of the day usually takes a bit longer. If it's a student that hasn't done the walk around yet, it takes again longer to show them how to do the walk around. And then depending on whether it's winter or summer, you would get to 6, 7 flights a day, pretty much following the same thing. Every now and then you get the trial lessons, which are nice and relaxing, and it's all about giving them control and showing them how to fly, and but also keeping them somewhat entertained and showing them the beauty of flying, and managing, of course, their expectations, telling them about. I forgot actually, but even now it would surprise me how you feel the turbulence in small aircrafts compared to the bigger ones. Trying to manage their nerves, because lots of people get nervous. Trying to make sure you do the safety briefing for them as well, showing them the exits, the fire extinguisher, and all that. So yeah, it's that used to be my day as a flying instructor. And in between them, I may have had a bit of a lunch break or a snack, and that's a whole day out. Lots of flying. Very different now, but that was real flying. Very enjoyable.
I can imagine instructing to be quite a rewarding sort of part of your career as well. What would you say the most rewarding part you've had is with a student?
Instructing has been, yes, the most rewarding part. And actually, just like I said, I mean, I still to this day, even though it's been almost 3 years, 2.5 years, I think, since I quit instructing, I still get messages from former students telling me whether they've got whatever airline jobs, or as I said, some of them are starting their upgrade now, so they're future captains. But even I still get messages from students, or even photos from flying. So they got their PPL a long time ago, maybe with me or after I left, but they remembered me, and I still get photos and messages from them after so long, because it's easy to forget, but for me it's amazing how I feel like no student has forgotten me, and I haven't forgotten any students. And I think that's the part you get to just like parenthood. You get to see them grow up, and actually, it's great to see that actually they managed to achieve to get the license to move on and maybe become professional pilots, or just fly out with their families and enjoy it. Either way, it's great to see them succeed. That's the greatest reward for me.
And how did you get the best out of, say, a student that's sort of struggling? What sort of strategies did you use to get the best out of that person?
Well, I had to adapt my strategies because actually I had all sorts of difficult students. I had students that were extremely nervous. I had students that found it hard to remember certain things, found it hard to adapt to other things. Yeah, I had students that I struggled to understand how to flare. I had students, so they had different difficulties, and I had to adjust to each student individually based on their needs. I remember probably one of the hardest ones where I picked up some students that were ongoing with their PPL, and they moved on from many instructors, and they've already gathered quite a number of hours, still waiting for their first solo. Lots of pressure, lots of money being spent, as you know. And of course, they couldn't quite move on with their course until they managed to get solo. And actually, trying to help them find their way. And I remember, I think I had a couple of them, at least, where I was the first one that managed to send them after many, many hours and many instructors being changed, finally to go solo. And then it just clicked. They just needed that bit to get right, and then their confidence grew so much. They just needed to then they were released. They were ready. And others, they went solo very quickly, and they got stuck with maybe other things, navigation, or they got stuck with other things. So yeah, again, it just managing their expectations and working on their weaknesses. It's always very, very important, no matter how badly a lesson ended, to always debrief properly and point out the positives, because students get let down so easily. And it's so often I've seen that after a lesson they're thinking, oh God, this wasn't good, or landing was a bit off the center line, or wasn't that, or I missed that call. Or it's always important to stress the positives, and always important to stress out the things that they need to work on for next time. Not generally, but specifically, they need to know exactly what went right and what they need to prepare for next time. And I think quite often I've seen a number of instructors, I myself have had a number of experiences, and I remember that's what I missed the most, not being sure what I'm expected to do or what I should be working on. And I think, I tried at least to adapt that to my teaching style and to help students understand better and manage their expectations, because to some of them I had to tell them, look, it's not realistic to hope to finish in the minimum of 45 hours, but it's realistic to expect this or that. It's better than trying to give them false hopes, but also equally telling them, look, in order to do that, you have to put in quite a bit more work, which you're not doing at the moment. That's the harder part, because of course they all want to be Top Guns and Mavericks, and of course they all want to be the best, and they all want to finish in minimum hours, and not everybody can be the biggest winner, but you have to be realistic and accept that, yes, even if you're learning slowly, it doesn't mean that it's not for you. It doesn't mean just because you got airsick this time, it doesn't mean that you can never fly again. It doesn't, just because you had a bad landing doesn't mean you should never try it again, and so on. So it's important to manage their mental well-being, because in aviation it's so important to stay positive and realistic, and not that's why we have the psychological part of the medical. You have to make sure that you are as sound as you can be, and you're not making any rush decisions, and you don't get too emotional about things. At the end of the day, it's just something that needs to be done, and it's always better to take a step back and not to be overly stressed, because that will affect the way you see and do things. I haven't flown probably in a while, but you'll get back it, and you'll probably see these things again. I remember I think we were doing navigation when you left, right?
Yeah,
so you were quite close to finishing.
Yeah, I've done 35 hours now, so
yeah,
close. So I think I need a little bit of a refresher, and then hopefully we can get it all finished. So couple of weeks, I reckon. But what I liked about you the most, what I noticed, especially with yourself, is you sort of took the time. Some instructors are like, oh, we'll just get on to the next one, to the next one. But if your next lesson went 10 minutes late, it went 10 minutes late because you took the 10 minutes to explain what the student needed to hear. Yeah, that's what I noticed being a student anyway.
Well, that's good to know. Yes, absolutely. I mean, time is there anyway. Luckily, unlike so see with the airlines, it's time is slightly less flexible. Of course, we're still not going to compromise safety and all that.
Yeah.
But of course, I mean, come on. Anyway, the way things were scheduled, it's almost impossible to stick within 1.5 hours to the briefing, debriefing, get flying, and all that. And it's more important to make sure that before you get in the aircraft, you know what you're doing, and afterwards, you know what you have to do for the next time. Rest of it in between is, well, whatever it is, and yeah, it's important. It's important to take the time. Sometimes a minute or an extra minute or two will make the difference. Nobody wants to feel rushed. Nobody wants to feel like they're not important enough.
Exactly.
Nobody wants to feel like as soon as the engine switched off, you're no longer worth my time, or I'm no longer earning money, so it doesn't matter. Nobody wants to feel like that because it's not fair. You yourself as a student, you're paying lots of money to be there. I was a student, I paid lots of money to be there. You have to understand, we have to never lose our humanity. You know, you have to see it from a humane point of view. You have to be kind to the ones trying to learn. And if you're in a position to help them, you have to try and do your best. And you'll see that if you become an instructor, you will get involved, you will get emotional, you'll start thinking, oh God, what can I do to help this person? How can I do, you know? But you'll see how rewarding it will be.
Yeah, I'm very excited to get it started. In terms of then the next stage of your journey, you then would have got interviews for airline jobs. If there's someone listening that have upcoming interviews for airline roles, any advice for interviews?
I remember that actually as soon as I finished my ATPL theory, I kind of thought like, wow, okay, that's great, you know, all I need to do now is the typewriting and I'll be all airline ready. In reality, of course, airline preparation, and then not just preparing to get into the airlines, but to stay there, it takes constant revision. So before you get a job with before you do your first typewriting, they will interview you in theory, general theory, ATPL theory, so nothing new. But of course, it just depends which company you go to. They will always find some tricky questions that you may have long forgotten. So it's very important to try and... myself, I bought the Airline Pilots Interview book. I think it was the 2nd edition. And I used to make a point of just reading through it. I wasn't trying to necessarily memorize it. But if you just read through it, it's basically like... summary of the ATPL theory, or the main bits, and explanations, which is quite important because most of the time they will not ask you and give you A, B, C, D. They will ask you for an explanation of something. So you have to be in a position to be able to explain certain things. Most of them are quite decent. Again, it depends which airline you go to and what kind of questions they have for you. And then once you get that first job, of course, and you do your typewriting, once you go for the 2nd interview, then they will ask you a specific questions, most likely about the type of aircraft that you're flying, more than just random ATPL questions. So then you have to be quite confident with the aircraft that you're flying. You need to know the limitations, the FCOM, maybe the OMB if you are already with that company and you know, let's say you're going for an upgrade interview or for any kind of other position. So you need to know their procedures. Even if it's, for example, obviously I fly the Airbus, and the Airbus is quite a standardized aircraft. So mainly what Airbus does, companies will, well, they can be even more restrictive. Well, most likely they are as restrictive as Airbus. So you need to then know what company procedures are there, you know, what's allowed, what's not allowed, what's different from the Airbus procedures in terms of your company procedures. So it becomes a bit more specific once you get that first job. Me, I'm on my 3rd company now. I did my typewriting with Tarom, which is the national carrier for Romania. I was very excited to go back home. I can't remember whether you were, I think you already left by the time I got my first job.
Yeah, just before, I think.
Yeah. And I was really excited. And of course, for that was a basic, you know, straightforward, I would say, interview to get that first job. And then I got scheduled to do the typewriting. I did the typewriting. And then probably it didn't take longer than a couple of months after I qualified that they decided to retire the Airbus fleet. So then I had a choice either to go to Boeing or ATR or just go to another company. I chose to go to another company because I didn't want to then start all over again. I wanted to get more experience on Airbus. So then again, I had a little bit of experience on Airbus, not an awful lot. So actually, when I went for my second interview, they chose to ask me some general questions rather than Airbus specific because I had very little experience on Airbus. I had like under 100 hours. So yeah, again, it just depends. So I would suggest airline preparation is essential. Now there's so many websites with questions, with interview tips for depending on which airline you go for. And then there's the psychometric tests, which quite often, I don't know if you ever encountered them, they're very strange. They would probably very much suit somebody that likes gaming. You get all sorts of little games you have to sort out. Very intuitive in a way, but that's something that needs practice as well. So quite often you would have to sign up on these websites. They have like a monthly fee. And you make sure that you get used to these exercises because they're time limited. And you would end up wasting a lot of time trying to figure out what you meant to be doing. Quite often you won't get past that very easy exercise just because you don't spend enough time, you didn't have enough time to understand what you're asked to do. So that's what I would suggest. Once you get your ATPL, make sure you study it, you revise it regularly, and then sign up on these websites and do the exercises specific for the type of airline that you're going for, because each airline will have their exercises posted on these websites, so then you get to practice them, and that's the best thing to do. Companies like Wizz Air, for example, they have what's called a group exercise. I had a group exercise as well at my company. So basically just puts a group of people together and they give you a scenario, whatever that is, and they just want to see how you guys work together. There's no right or wrong answer, so they won't judge you based on what decision you make, but rather they would judge you on how you can listen to the others, work with the others, whether you listen to other people's opinions, whether you speak out, or maybe you feel like you have nothing to add. So that's another thing that quite a lot of airlines have, which is, like I said, it's called a group exercise. So they try and analyze you from all points of view to see how you interact with other people. And of course, the last one is the simulator. Whether you have experience or not on that aircraft, of course, they'll give you exercises based on your experience. There's always going to be a simulator session. It's always better, again, to know, you would have done your MCC course by then, so you would have had some sort of multi-crew experience, but it's always best to have an experience on that type of aircraft, so you don't waste too much time trying to see where to look, what to find. You have a bit of an idea to make your life easier. And they will ask you something basic, like maybe just maybe do a circuit or fly an ILS or just enter a hold or something that will show you your airmanship, not so much your knowledge of the aircraft, because you're not necessarily, if you don't have a type rating, you're not meant to have any technical knowledge of the aircraft. But it would definitely help if you yourself put in the time to get that knowledge so that you later on don't struggle with it. Because in an interview situation, even a basic thing will make you nervous and you'll make some silly mistakes regardless. So the more relaxed you are, more likely you are to just focus on flying and get the job done. They're not there to trick you, but quite often we feel like we're being, they give us some trick questions just because we panic.
On the lookout for the trick question.
Exactly, yeah. So again, I'm no expert in telling you this. From my experience, I've had a few interviews, and so far, this is what I've noticed. Most of the time, you get decent questions, and you get all these exercises on top of it. And then at the very end, you get the simulator, which most companies have. Not all of them, but most companies have. If you have a type rating, then they will actually look for more technical knowledge and more flying skills as well on top of your general airmanship.
And then the first day you flew passengers, how was you feeling? How did it go first day?
To be honest, it felt like no other feeling ever. But in fact, actually, passengers or no passengers, I tell you what the best feeling was. Base training was the best feeling. Right, okay. I still remember. So base training is what we did right after type rating, which is after your first type rating, you need to then take an empty plane and do 6 touch and goes and then 1 go around, just to get your handling basically. And all you do is circuit in a big Airbus and international airports. So for me it was great because actually, although I did it at Otopeni, Bucharest airport, so it's actually a fairly busy airport. There's 2 runways there, and anyway, but it's got a lot of traffic. And I remember my base training took, I mean, just think, it's just 6 circuits, right? It took almost 2 hours because they had to reroute us quite a bit. And anyway, but it was an empty plane. Actually, it was myself, the instructor, another safety pilot, and then the other 2 students in the aircraft. The door was open anyway, the aircraft was empty, and they would just come in and out of the cockpit, and that was it. Never used the autopilot. It was just all manual flying for 2 hours, the Airbus. That was just the best feeling ever. Because that was the first feeling I ever got of the real plane. Whether it had passengers in it or not, it didn't matter. But that base training was awesome. It was great. Great
Sounds
fun.
unreal.
Yeah, it was
much different to a Cessna, I assume.
Very different.
Yeah.
And yet, you know what? And yet we were doing touch and goes. You know, just like we did in Cessna. So in a way, a plane is a plane. And actually, I remember thinking, do you know what if, because then of course you will see with the type rating, you do all sorts of scenarios. Quite often when you're left with a very complex aircraft, maybe with no systems left, no hydraulics, no electric, nothing. And actually it just becomes a big Cessna. It all goes back to basics. You have to manually trim it. You have to manually fly it. You feel all the... And it is a plane, and you have to treat it like a plane, no matter how complex it is, how many computers it's got. At the end of the day, it is a plane. And although we are encouraged to, of course, use all the automation available to us, when things do go badly, it's very important never to lose that skill, that basic skill that we once had. And it's very hard to maintain once you start in the airlines. You mainly just train it in the simulator afterwards, because realistically, you don't get that much hand-on flying anymore. Sadly. And actually our company is okay because there's no restrictions in terms of they will allow you to fly manually quite a bit. So but other companies, they impose that you keep the autopilot on and engage you straight away, and you practice all the manual flying just in simulators.
Wow.
So yeah, it kind of kills a little bit the joy of it, but safety is first. As I said, you'll feel maverick when you fly the Cessna, and when you fly the rest of the time. It's all about sticking to the procedures. It's all about being stabilized. It's all about being safe. It's all about Then the rest of them, should everything go wrong, you should still have all those skills there in case you need to use them, but not to be used every day. So
what's your favourite thing about the A320? Now you've been flying it for quite a while. What's your favourite thing and something you'd change if you could change it?
I would not change a single thing. I think the only other aircraft that I would like to fly after I'm done flying the A320 is maybe the 350.
Very nice.
A state-of-the-art aircraft. But yeah, I mean, my favourite thing, of course, for me was just the comfort of it, the technology behind it. I mean, it's amazing. It's a flying computer. So many people I've met that they keep saying, oh, Airbus it's all about pushing buttons. In a way it is, but it's all about pushing the right button at the right time. It's all about managing the systems in such way that you use them as smoothly as possible, as correctly as possible, the way Airbus recommends, which is, it's all very... Let the aircraft do its own thing. The Airbus is such a smart computer, but you must give it the right instructions to follow. Otherwise, you become you try and interfere too much with it when there's nothing wrong. Then you start making mistakes. Right. And I've flown with a number of captains that they flew Boeing for most of their lives, and they were flying the Airbus in a very non-standard way, which is, of course, it's not forbidden, but it's not the way Airbus recommends. And you could see the philosophy is different. And I love the Airbus philosophy because it's extremely logical, and I like logical things. I don't like overcomplicating things because I think humans, we're prone to mistakes anyway. And with the moment we start improvising too much, in this whole aviation industry, the human factor is the weakest point. So if we can eliminate our input in a way, not totally of course, but if we let the aircraft do its own thing, we're much more likely to have a good result, provided that the systems are working fine. It's got so many protections. I mean, you have to really struggle to even stall this thing. You have to really struggle. It makes you think about the Air France incident, right?
Yeah.
A lot of things have to go wrong in order to end up in such a situation. Airbus is an amazing machine. So yeah, this is my favorite thing about Airbus. It's about the understanding behind it, and the fact that you can be so subtle. It's great for women as well, I think, because you don't need to show all that big strength. It's all about small inputs. It's all about very civilized, comfortable, modern aircraft. And I would say the license to fly the Airbus, at least in Europe, is the best one to have because, Airbus is mainly in Europe, and it's your ticket to fly at almost any airline. Even Ryanair now, they have Lauda, right, which is whole Airbus fleet. So definitely I would say it's good investment, even if you end up paying for a type rating. It's not it's an investment. It's not a gamble, which is quite good actually, because your whole flight training up until that point is a little bit of a gamble.
Yeah,
When you
definitely.
get to the type rating bit, if you invest it in an Airbus type rating, I find that it's an investment. It's almost certain, provided that you keep your medical and everything is good, that you will find a job flying the Airbus.
And you said you've had obviously experience with a few captains as well that might be a bit hand heavy on the controls. As a first officer, what makes a good captain in your eyes?
I mean, a good captain, what I find inspiring in a good captain is, first of all, it all starts with the attitude. The attitude of a good captain is knowledgeable and relaxed and open to suggestions, because quite often I've seen captains that I was at first a little bit shocked. Tarom is a bit of an old school, and he had a lot of influence from obviously Russia and Eastern Europe.
Right.
So a little bit rough. Then, for example, when I was at Smartlinks, which is a more westernized world, there was not a single flight where the captain wouldn't make sure that I'm okay with every little decision that was being made from any little thing, whereas I was used to sort of maybe not being involved in every single decision. So I found that actually as a first officer, now I'm a senior first officer, but when I was a junior first officer, I definitely, so many decisions were being made without me even being aware of them. As now I realize that actually decisions are being, we're both making the decisions, and actually two minds are better than one anyway, even if that one mind may be a junior first officer. So a good captain is always a captain that can listen to other inputs. And I'm not just talking about the first officer. They are asking the cabin crew if everything is okay. If there was a noise or if there's something or a smell, they delegate, they ask other people, they listen, they don't panic, and they don't react in a rushed way. Because actually with the Airbus, it's not like in Cessna, you have an engine failure, you have to do everything quickly in 2 seconds. You always have time. It's quite often, of course, there's the memory items, but then you have time to analyze things. You mustn't rush and be panicked. So yeah, the best captains for me are the ones that are calm, knowledgeable, and also they are able to delegate certain duties so they don't get overloaded themselves, because quite often captains can feel like the whole weight is on their shoulders and they're alone in this and they have to make this decision, and they don't use the resources that they have with them. So yes, definitely. Hopefully I will be one of those captains that listens to others. Hopefully the years of instructing have taught me that, because it's always good to get people involved early on, help them make the decisions, and keep them involved in the decisions that you're making. Even if they're small decisions, for example, I don't know, how much fuel are we taking on this trip, why are we taking extra fuel, or why, and so on.
And because of your instructing, would you like to get into sort of line training captain as well once you've got to that level? Is that something you'd be interested in as well? Or?
I have to be completely honest and say, from my point of view, I've really enjoyed being an instructor. I really have, but I don't, at the moment at least, I don't wish to be an instructor anymore, because what I would like to, line training instructor is one thing that maybe I would really like to do, but what I wouldn't particularly want to do is then end up being away, just spending the time in the simulators, because as an instructor you mostly spend the time in the simulators.
Of course.
And I actually quite like to fly, and I would like to maybe be a line training captain one day, but I would just like to do the flying bit. I'm not very interested in spending too much time in the simulators, because actually I feel like I still want to fly quite a bit, and then your time gets split in at least in half, and I'm not ready yet to, and I don't have that need necessarily. I'm happy to help and get others involved. Even if I'm not an instructor, when I will be a captain, I will anyway help first officers grow and teach them all that I know. Whether I'm an instructor or not doesn't matter. It's not something that I necessarily. It's not my biggest dream.
I feel aviation can be sort of an industry where you always want the next thing. What helps you stay patient with the process, especially in the early days?
Well, I mean, you cannot be impatient at any point in aviation. I think the moment you get impatient, you start putting a lot of pressure on yourself. You start making mistakes, and then inevitably you start being very unhappy all the time, because then if you're very impatient, you're always thinking of what I would like it to be next, and obviously you're not happy with what you have now. And I think it's good to take a step back and to allow time to fix certain things. It's also important to understand, I've met a number of people that they are sure that they are ready for the upgrade because they have already like 2,000 or 3,000 hours on the type, and they're thinking, wow, I'm really ready. I myself don't feel like I'm ready right now, even though I've been told that I'm getting very close to being ready, or that I am ready but I don't have the hours yet. But I think it's very important to actually really analyze it in such way that we all want four stripes. We all want the glory and the fame. We want to feel important, captain in the left-hand seat and all that. But actually, are we really ready? And I think it's always important to think that if we haven't been chosen yet for an upgrade or for whatever it is that we're waiting for, we mustn't rush that process, and we shouldn't put too much pressure on ourselves, because then we'll start getting extremely frustrated. And I've met a number of first officers that were getting very frustrated because they were waiting for an upgrade that they were entitled to, and then they had this attitude then all of a sudden that, oh, I don't care anymore because they haven't put me for the upgrade. I think it's very important not to end up like that, because that's only gonna cause more and more harm. And actually, looking back, I had this discussion actually with my husband. He was upset at first when he wasn't getting the upgrade many years ago, of course. And I said to him, but did you really feel like you were really ready for the upgrade from the very first time you felt like you were? And he said, no, I probably wasn't that time. But at the time I thought I was. So I thought, you know what, I'm not going to rush with this. I don't ever push for things like these, because I think they will happen when they're meant to happen, and it's never too late. And we need to be realistic that sometimes we're not where we think we are. We're not as good as we think we are, and we have to be humble. Anyway, it's good to be humble in this industry, because the moment you get too cocky, you things could really go wrong, and attitude is very important. Nobody wants to fly with somebody that's full of themselves, because they're not a joy to fly with. And also, the moment you feel that way, you've blocked yourself from learning anymore. So I think it's very important to be humble and to be open to learning all the time.
I think people forget that was always their dream, to get into the first officer seat anyway.
Exactly.
So I spoke to the last two guests that I had. One's a captain and one was a first officer, and they both sort of said they wish they enjoyed the process more, if anything, because you get there and then you're like, oh, what's next?
Exactly.
Yeah. Obviously aviation comes with a lot of resilience and dedication. How do you personally navigate sort of feedback and criticism that you get?
No, I mean, I'm quite, well, I would say it's impossible. I think you should ask others. I'm quite good with it in terms of, now I just changed companies, and of course I only just passed my line training, and I remember I only did I think 4 or 5 flights or something before I got qualified, because of course I had previous experience. Every time after flight, I'm used to receiving feedback. Even now, although I'm a senior first officer, it's not like I'm junior first officer. But I'm always very happy, and if I don't get the feedback, I will ask for it, because it's always very important. So any and every feedback is very important for me as a person, and as a professional, because quite often we do certain things, we have certain habits that people would notice. They will not always tell you. Even if they're not okay, they may or may not be written, which means that they're allowed, but maybe they are slightly non-standard or not required. So sometimes, people will ask you, why do you do it like this? Or why do you say that? Or why, oh, I do it because of that. It's always very important to challenge everything. And as a first officer, of course, I always tend to get some sort of feedback after a flight from the captain, because especially my previous company, it was a huge company, so that meant that almost every flight I probably would end up flying with somebody different. So then, okay, well, it's always very important. That's why standards are very important, because we could meet up for the first time. We do fly together. We both stick to the same rules and procedures, and we operate very successfully. We don't improvise. We don't each do our own thing. But also equally, we have our own individual way of doing things. So it's always very important to say, hey, I like how you did that, or I think you should do this or that. So feedback is always important. And I'm always very happy to listen to feedback. Always have been. Some people are more willing to give you feedback than others. Some people are just like, oh, it's fine, don't worry about it. It's that sort of thing. And others will give you a proper debrief. So just, again, it depends. But always be open for feedback, I would say. And ask for it. If you don't get it, still ask for it. It will only help.
And on the topic of feedback and advice, what's something you wish someone told you at the very start of your flying training?
Yeah, I wish somebody told me you can do it.
Funny enough, the last guest said the exact same thing.
I think, honestly, in fact, I can't really complain. That would be unfair. But actually, at the very beginning of my flight training, I don't think anybody believed that I would actually go through with it, because it was so wildly different from my life and from what I used to do. And I was no spring chicken anymore. I mean, I was already 30, and it's not like I was a youngster, all brave, so I had to really put in a lot of effort. So I think I would have loved for somebody to maybe show a bit more faith in me straight away, because I feel like I had to really dig very, very deep to find it. Because actually people were very good at telling me the costs of them, so I knew what to expect. I mean, if you do a research, you will pretty much have an idea of that. So I think it's just the mental side of it that people maybe are not so prepared for quite often. The costs are quite well known, generally speaking. You will know you'll spend a lot of money. Most of the time you could either buy a house or do a flight training. So yeah, you will know, you know, and everybody knows it's not cheap. But it's the mental side of things I wish people spoke more about. As such, people don't want to expose this weakness, because nobody wants to appear weak. Nobody wants to appear unhappy. Nobody wants to appear uncertain. But lots of people are. So I think it's important to... I wish I was told a bit more about it. But anyway, in the end, I learned it. And you've just got to have an open mind, and you will find your own way, and maybe you'll find it easier than others.
Were you the first person to fly in your family, or did you have someone to sort of look up to in the family?
Yeah, no, I'm the first one, and the only one at the moment, except for my husband that I met later on in life anyway. So I'm the first one. I come from a family of musicians, and nobody even thought of flying. I mean, they were pretty terrified. So yeah, I mean, definitely nobody to look up to. Who knows if after me somebody will decide, but unlikely. I think in my family, I'll be one of the only ones.
Yeah, I'm the same here, to be fair. I don't know where it's come from. My nan used to take me to the Cambridge airfield, just me and her, so I think that's probably what sparked it, but no one actually flies in my family or have anything to do with it, so it's crazy, isn't it?
Well, they're probably, probably once you'll take them flying. I know if you have any younger siblings or siblings, who knows what, yeah. Yeah,
that's very true. How do you stop yourself comparing yourself to other peers? Obviously, you did it in the modular route. I'm sure you had people that you knew that did it integrated at a similar time, people you met along the way. How did you stop comparing yourself to them?
I really try not to. Having said that, it's almost impossible not to compare yourself with other people, because actually I ended up at this company where I'm now. I am now colleague with my first type rating colleague. So we were both instructors.
Okay.
So we had very, very similar experience, very similar hours, but he was an instructor in Romania, I was an instructor in UK. And now we ended up at the same company 3 years later after the type rating. And we have a very similar experience, but now he's flying the Airbus 220. So he did the type rating on 320 with me, but now he's flying the 220. And but we have similar experience in terms of jet time and all that. So yeah, I mean, but we don't compare so much as to exchange experiences. It's not about who's done 1 hour more or who's closer to upgrade, or who's doing this. It's more about exchanging experiences, because although we started the beginning of our commercial route together with very similar experience, then we kind of had quite a different route. And then we met again at the same company, but yeah, again, we've gathered similar experience, but at different airlines. So we're now exchanging experiences. So I don't know who's the better pilot. I don't care. I don't know who's going to get upgrade first, but it's a different mentality. And I think anyway, just when we communicate and we exchange experiences, we learn from each other anyway. And I think that's the great part. Every time I speak to another first officer, whether we're the same experience or not, we exchange experiences. And I think it's better to put it like that than to compare yourself with them, because who knows anyway. And there's enough place for everybody. We don't have to, it's good to be competitive, but you don't have to overdo it. I think do your own thing, do it best as you can, and the biggest competitor is yourself. You know, it's nobody else can beat you than yourself. So if I try to be the best pilot I can be, then it doesn't matter if that guy is better. Yeah, but I'm the best I can be. I can't be any better than what I can be. I think you have to be realistic and be kind to yourself.
I think flying is such a small knit community as well. That I think you've probably known from your whole career, but you can't really burn any bridges, because I think you will always somehow bump into them in another sort of circle or company, or that's what I've heard quite a lot.
Exactly. It's a very small community, especially here in Romania, where I found that actually, God, I mean, I already feel like, I mean, I've only been here for 2.5, 3 years, and pretty much already I can recognize half the names of the aviation in Romania, and just by name, you know, and I've flown with a number of them, and so yeah, it is a small community worldwide. Actually, it's crazy. It's amazing how we find that we have connections everywhere. So it's always good to be considerate, and it's always nice to, as you said, not to burn any bridges, because you just never know. You never know. You'll end up working with the same people, different companies, or even same company. It's, you know, as they say, it's nice to be nice. It's a small community, and unless something really seriously horrible happened, there's no reason to be anything other than professional and friendly, because we're all a big team, and we can all work together to be better community and better industry.
That's sort of my plan with this podcast, really. It's just nice to sort of connect and speak to people that are in different situations, but all in the same sort of career and community. So that was
exactly.
I always like to leave the next generation with a bit of advice. So if you could leave the listeners with one bit of advice, what would it be?
I know it sounds very cliche, but dare to dream. I think the fact that I dared to dream allowed me to be here now, and it really made a huge difference in terms of my life overall, and both professional and private, because I dared to dream and I made a career change when I thought it was too late. So never give up. Dream and be patient.
I love that. That's the perfect way to end. Is there any way you'd like people to find you online, or anything you'd like to promote at all?
I mean, you've got my Instagram. I'm not hugely active on there because obviously my priorities are family, flying, and then whatever other social media. But you've got my Instagram, Sab Strings Wings, and I occasionally post there photos and experiences and all sorts. I don't particularly use YouTube anymore. I've been meaning to do so many videos, but you get caught up with life, and flying, of course, takes priority. So, yeah. If you want to give me a follow on Instagram, by all means.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Chasin Altitude podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like and subscribe to us on YouTube, or give us a follow on Spotify so you never miss an episode. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Chasin Altitude. And if you're a pilot or anyone with an aviation background listening to this and you'd like to come on the show, drop me a DM. I'd love to connect. Have a great week and keep chasing altitude.